Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning to this webinar titled Food Safety Culture Development, Best Practices for a More Sustainable Food System. This is the second webinar of the webinar series Beyond COVID-19 Challenges and the New Opportunities for Sustainable and Innovative Food Systems. It's really a pleasure for me to start with this webinar this morning, and I introduce also my co-moderator, Gerald Schleining, before starting with a short presentation.
Good morning to everybody from Austria.
Okay, so I hope it is fine and you can see my screen. And just a brief introduction of the webinar of this morning. I'm in Italy, so for me it's morning. After a short introduction to the webinar of today, there will be 3 talks, and I thank you very much the 3 speakers, Professor Lucia Vanini, Caroline Wallace, and Jamuna Prakash, that will contribute with 3 different topics under the main topic of the food safety culture development. And this project, this webinar is a part of this webinar series, and I anticipate you that the next one will be focused on a cross-disciplinary perspective to promote sustainable food system, and we will have the contribution of the KICs, in particular the ASKFOOD, the KIC Health, and the KIC Climate. It will be held on the 12th of February next week. So just to briefly introduce what is ASKFOOD, which is the sponsor of this or the promoter of this webinar series, which is an Erasmus Plus Knowledge Alliance that is trying to promote the set of a permanent knowledge alliance between businesses and higher education institutes in a food-related sector by promoting a series of activities that could actually improve the academia industry interaction, but also the development of an innovative higher education in the food sector by different activities, and to promote also innovative skills and entrepreneurial mindset of the future generation of the food professionals. For this, we apply multidimensional approaches. We try to be as much as possible multi-trans-sectoral by involving different stakeholders of the food system to develop from this point of view really a networking environment, and with the aim to finalize to promote a new educational ecosystem for innovation and sustainability of the food value chain. The activities of ASKFOOD are actually aimed at different target groups, and all the people which is interested actually are welcome to join us. And briefly, some of the main outcomes of this project, and you can find all of them, most of them already available in our website. We try to somehow implement a series of virtual tools that could help actually food industries to find best practices on innovation, innovative or training tools for helping the companies, but also all interested people to promote innovation in the food field with the Smart Atlas database, the forecast aggregator, which is a collection of scenarios under 8 specific themes that are leading the changes in the food sector, and then the interactive training app identifier, that is a virtual tool that allows different target groups to identify the career paths, but also the skills which are needed to promote a high quality, also professional career of the food professionals. We developed a series of new tools, new methods, and also training methodologies for entrepreneurial skills. We are setting an interesting interface to boost innovation in the food sector, which is the digital business and training ecosystem that is under construction, and soon you will be informed. And last but not least, the permanent alliance under the ASKFOOD observatory that is will be somehow a permanent alliance of main stakeholders to trace the changes in the skills and competencies of the future professionals in order to promote also training methodologies, but also training and educational paths that match these needs. So now let's start with our first speaker of this morning, that is Professor Lucia Vanini from the University of Bologna. She is Associate Professor at the Department of Agriculture and Food Science of Alma Mater Studiorum of the University of Bologna. She's, besides being a friend, she's a very expert in the field of food microbiology, with the main focus on conventional and innovative technologies, and in particular the non-thermal ones, the use of antimicrobials, and very, very interesting research topics. It's really a pleasure for us to have Lucia with us, because she is also involved in several EU funded but also national projects, and for this reason I invited her to deliver today a very interesting presentation. So for under the food safety culture development. So it's my pleasure to leave now the floor of the video to Lucia Vanini for her presentation.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you to all the audience and the technical team. Can you see my my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm really pleased to be here today to share with you our view. I mean, from some colleagues from the University of Bologna on what we think are some of the needs of the food industry in relation to food safety as a consequence of coronavirus. And so during this presentation, I will also show some of the really recent experiences and outcomes that we have really recently had in some research topics on safety aspects and the issues that food industry is facing. As almost 1 year has passed since the outbreak of coronavirus disease, it's well known that lockdowns, social distancing, stop of non-essential businesses, restriction, and all the measures that have been taken to trying to limit the spread of the virus resulted in a disruption in most production and supply chains, which include, as I listed in this slide, the restriction on people movement, delays in the supply of raw materials, fluctuation in the prices of the food and raw materials, problems and stop of availability of in somehow raw materials, lack of workers, and for the companies, these food companies, there have been problems they had to face in order to not to stop their business, so they had to find alternatives, redesign or even redesign their business models. As a result, for sure, there has been, as all we know, the first result has been food insecurity at global level. And we also, I mean, in the so-called developed country, have experienced food insecurity. And this is at community level, food access and availability have been strongly affected by this situation. Because of problems in transportation, distribution, delivery chain, but also at individual level, there has been a strong impact, and there have been significant changes in consumption behavior. In this infographic, in this slide, I've reported an infographic which has been produced by ASKFOOD, so the ISEKI-Food, following a survey with over 5,000 consumers in the EU, and it summarized somehow the most important changes that have occurred in their behavior in relation to food consumption. And according to the survey, most or almost all of these, many of these changes will last even after the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of the most relevant, at least for the food industry, are well known and include buying more, spending at the same time spending more time at home without eating outside, also because many food service operators were closed. But also there have been significant changes in the way we buy food. There has been a strong increase in the online shopping, and there has been a strong increase, for example, in food delivery. More people have eaten more ready-to-eat food and more packaged food. Also because somehow these were perceived, at least for by some of the interviewed, as with a higher level of food safety. Another important aspect that emerged from this survey is that there is a even stronger attention compared to before the COVID-19 pandemic on their health status and the value for the food that is purchased and eaten. Overall, so as a consequence of this rapidly changed scenario, the industry has to quickly and rapidly change to adapt and to cope with the new challenges from one side and new requests from the consumer, and also, as I said, changes in their behavior. In this slide, I've summarized the main issues that food industry now during this pandemic has to address in some way. So in addition to food security, obviously food safety is a really relevant and significant issue in order to avoid or at least limit the spread of the virus along the food chain up to the consumers. But at the same time, consumers, as I said before, are looking to solution, that means food or supplement, to protect themselves and their immune system, and this by adopting healthier diets or foods with bioactive ingredients or functional foods, which in some way can support and stimulate their immune system. And last but not least, even though before COVID pandemic, sustainability was one of the top topics in the research and also in the overall trend, now seems to be less relevant, but it is not. It still remains one of the main issues to be addressed. So I've tried to summarize in some way which are the needs from the food industry, which result in topics for the research and for RTD and academia. For sure, one of the main issue and challenge is related, as I wrote, to food and water to safety issue. I mean, we have had several indication that it is rather unlikely that coronavirus can be transmitted from food or food packaging to consumers, but evidence on this transmission remains under investigation. So there is really a request and a need to get further deeper investigation, also focusing on the factors, conditions that affect the persistence of the virus in food, in water, but also food surfaces. And also it is important and it is necessary to investigate the persistence, as I said, of the virus in food products, also in relation to the different type of food processing condition adopted, but also storage condition up to the final consumer. It is important to have effective and to adopt and follow through the whole chain good hygiene practices, and really important to have effective technologies to inactivate the virus, not only on the food, whatever in case it's present, but particularly on the packaging material. And strictly related to this, there is the need, and this is a challenge for obviously for the food industry, for packaging material which are innovative and in some way able to reduce or limit the persistence of the virus onto this packaging. In relation to the changed consumers' behavior, as I said before, during the pandemics, there has been a strong increase in services such as takeaway, but specifically food delivery. This is presents some risk in terms of cross-contamination, not only for pathogenic microorganisms, but obviously for the transmission of the virus. So it is important to improve the knowledge and deliver, disseminate effective food safety habits and hygiene practices, not only among the food operators and food handlers, but also among food consumers. As the food delivery service has increased, they receive food from personnel that, as I will show a bit later, they are not always trained, and in some way may represent a mean for cross-contamination and transmission of biological agents in general. And a third topic, third aspect, which present some challenges for the food industry, and there are some gaps that needs to be overcome, and so also in this area a lot of research is needed, is in relation to the possible effect that food and nutrients can have in protecting a consumer from the virus, or in some way how they can favor the recovery in case of infection. Another aspect really important, which can play an important role, but again, knowledge is still lacking, is the possible protective effect of the human microbiota in preventing or limiting the infection of the virus. Following this overview of what are the main challenges, the main issues that should be addressed with a deep research investigated in order to provide the food industry with effective measure outcomes which can be adopted to overcome the current issues related to coronavirus, but in some way they can be used also for further pandemics or challenges, similar challenges for the future. As I said, I would like to share with you some of the results we had within some collaboration with some food industry, or within projects funded within COAL in response to COVID-19 pandemics. The first case study, as we can say, is related to the development of an innovative anti-coronavirus packaging material. This research has been performed by the University of Bologna in collaboration with, I think, European level, in collaboration with the BASTA and FEFCO. And the aim of this study was mainly to investigate the survivability of the virus onto different packaging materials. Among the packaging materials which were used, in particular, it was tested also an innovative material, Attivo, which the so-called Attivo, which has been patented, and it's a cardboard packaging material for fruit, vegetable, but it has enhanced properties in terms of reducing the spoilage, and so improving the shelf life of the fruit thanks to the presence of antimicrobials. It was this packaging material, cardboard packaging material, has been tested to see whether it can have some effect also against coronavirus. And thanks to this collaboration, it was found that the antimicrobial compounds contained used for these active cardboard are able to significantly reduce the persistence of the virus onto the packaging compared to the reference material. I don't go into details, but obviously this is an important result, and we are also investigating which are the best condition in terms of content of the different antimicrobials to increase and enhance the efficacy against the virus. The second experience that I'm going to share is related to a project which has been funded by the ISEKI-Food within the call against COVID-19. And this refers to a sanitation system based on plasma technology. This technology has been used is widely used in the food industry for the microbial inactivation of spoilage and also pathogenic material in food. It has been tested and proved to have really promising results also against for the mycotoxin decontamination and the inactivation of some enzymes which in some way can reduce or impair quality parameters of the food. This is because the cold plasma technology is based on the generation of a mixture of reactive species which have antimicrobial action. So within this project, it has been tested whether this technology can be used also against the coronavirus for the surface decontamination or reduction of the survivability of the virus onto packaging material. So a prototype has been developed and also launched on the market. And also because the results were really interesting in that plasma treatment is able to damage the virus, thus reducing its infectivity. So the plasma technology has proved to be it's an emerging technology, but and it has proved to be to have efficacy not only against spoilage and pathogenic bacteria, as literature already reported, but also against the coronavirus. So it can be used to reduce the risk of cross-contamination or transmission of the virus through the packaging material. The possibility to have cross-contamination again through surfaces, it's a problem also faced within another project funded by ISEKI-Food within the COVID-19 rapid response call that is called Safe Delivery, and targeted the food delivery system. Because the food delivery system has some gaps and poses some risks linked to human factor, the pure hygiene of the delivery boxes that frequently, very often are not sufficiently cleaned, and the condition during delivery are not controlled. So these poses some issues in terms of safety. So Within this project, it has been developed an innovative solution that has been launched in January on the market. That is a delivery box which is closed directly to the food provider once the food is put inside the delivery box. So during the whole food delivery, the box cannot be opened, so this limits the risk of contamination of the food inside. The box can be opened only by the consumer once he receives the delivery box by the rider, because, as I said, the box is closed directly to the food producers, and the consumer can open it through a code that is sent directly to the final consumer. Also for this, as I said before, the surface contamination of packaging, but also of the containers used for food delivery represent a risk in terms of cross-contamination. While developing this innovative solution, we have also tested the persistence of the virus, coronavirus, I mean, onto this surface. And I don't want to enter into details, just a really important outcome that emerged was that the persistence is strictly dependent on the environmental conditions. That means, in particular, at the higher is the humidity, the higher is the persistence. So this aspect has to be taken into consideration also for the food operators. Because it's really important to adopt cleaning and disinfection measures and protocols that take into account this aspect. I mean, cleaning and disinfection protocols should be redesigned, taking into consideration that with the high humidity levels, the persistence of the virus is favored. So, within the project, but also in general, it's important to adopt effective measure for cleaning and disinfection. And for this, within the project, we have taken into consideration an alternative procedure based on gaseous ozone in order to avoid washing. Because washing in some way, as I said before, would require also a drying phase in order to avoid humidity and so the risk of persistence of the virus. Obviously, cleaning the contamination of the surfaces used for food delivery, but also in general for material, it's really important. I just want to show you this this final slide by saying that within the project we have tested over 200 delivery bags, and we found that although the surface contamination was not really high compared to other packaging material and data found in the literature, an important aspect that emerged that must be taken into consideration by the food industry is that most of the deliverers during the survey declared that they were not trained for their job. So they did not receive any education, any training on any food safety aspects. So this is to say that the way through the food chain to have safe food, and it's rather long. Innovation is necessary, also because industry has to face and to cope with several challenges. But we should not forget that research alone is not enough. It cannot stand be alone. Also, education of all the people involved through the whole chain, not only food handlers, but as I showed, for example, food delivery, is necessary to assure food safety through the whole chain. So I hope we can go on maybe later for the discussion in case you have any any question or any point.
Thank you very much, Lucia, for this really interesting presentation.
We cannot hear you, Paola.
It's open?
Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Before leaving the floor to Gerard, really appreciate your presentation. Science and research are actually a key challenge to face a key element to face the challenges launched by COVID-19, and actually training and education is absolutely important also to transfer this new knowledge. And I have already ready one question for the question time at the end of the webinar. I just briefly communicated to all the participants that the chat is open for all questions you would like to raise at the end of the presentation of the talks given by the speakers. So please use the chat, add your questions, and we will open the discussion at the end. That's all from my side. Gerard, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you, Paola. We will continue now with the next two presentations, and as Paola said, have the question and answer session after all the presentations. So I would like to introduce now our next speaker, Carol Wallace. She is Professor of Food Safety Management and co-director of Nutritional Science and Applied Food Safety Studies Group and a steering team member of the University of Central Lancashire Research Centre for Global Development. Her research interests about food safety performance along the whole food chain, in particular the HACCP, system effectiveness, food safety culture, and also the causal factors for food outbreaks and incidents, and controlling food safety risks in business and also at home. She will give us now some information on current issues in food safety culture. So please, Carol, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Gerhard. Let me just, okay. Okay, I hope you can see my slides now.
Yes, perfect, perfect.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organisers for inviting me to talk today, and also thank the audience for attending. It's great to see so many people in the webinar this morning. So what I would like to do is talk to you today about some of the current things that are going on in food safety culture. But to do that, I wanted to run through a little bit of background first of all, and look at the evolution of food safety management and culture, and then talk about some of the work that's been done around tools to measure food safety culture and where things are going, because we're seeing a lot of developments around requirements in public and private standards for focusing on culture. We need to know how to strengthen culture, and also as we've heard in the previous presentation, there are a lot of gaps and work needed to research and to collaborate to fill those gaps. So excuse me, I'll be talking about that from the point of view of food safety culture, so that we can work together and move the field forward. So starting off then, just to cast our minds back to food safety management and culture development, I've put up here a timeline, not to go through this in any detail, but really just to try and illustrate how, to illustrate the development of management systems and culture. And I think you can see, going back to the start of modern food safety management in the 1960s forward, there's a lot of green boxes here, and that's really all about HACCP coming through and food safety management systems coming through. At the bottom of the slide, at the right hand side, there's some yellow boxes, and this is really where we've started to see food safety culture coming through. So it's really over the last 10 years that we've seen work in food safety culture, and we're starting to get a much better understanding of it now, but there's still work to do. So our understanding of food safety management systems and culture has come over that period, and if we'd talked 10 years ago about, well, how do we ensure food safety in production, we'd probably been talking about a number of things in this diagram. We've been talking about safe design of food products, we've been talking about HACCP, and we've been talking about prerequisite programs. And there was an understanding that there were essential management practices around commitment, roles and responsibilities, and so on, to make that happen. But really, from research, and this came from a number of outbreaks that had happened, it also came from a research into what made systems work well, we found that the softer side of food safety, so the people side, the behavioural side, the understanding side, was becoming much more important, because we started to understand that the systems alone weren't giving us what we needed in terms of strength for food safety. So this kind of nebulous cloud, if you like, started to appear around our systems of food safety culture, and it needed a different set of skills to try and understand what this was and how to actually work on it. So food safety culture is really building on work from a number of different fields. Culture, organizational culture is very well developed. There's work around human factors, safety, science as well. And so what we're doing now in food safety culture is building on a lot of the work that's come before. But I think one of the important things is that food safety culture needs input from a number of perspectives. So here, and I started as a microbiologist and HACCP specialist, but in food safety culture, it's not just the microbiologists and so on that are understanding food safety. We need the psychologists, we need the people who are behavioural specialists, so that we can understand this much better. But if you're new to food safety culture and you haven't really heard or read much about it before, you might be trying to get a handle on what it actually is. And we quite often use metaphors to try and explain food safety culture, and that the most popular ones being icebergs, onions, and trees. And we can show very pretty pictures, but what we're really trying to get over here is that culture is not something that we can see on the surface within our food businesses. It's underneath the surface, it's multi-layered, it's the things that are going on when we're not looking, and these are the things that we need to try and understand to be able to strengthen the culture and support our food safety performance. Okay, so there's a number of definitions of food safety culture out there. I'm not going to read these out to you, but I thought it'd be useful to have them on the slides so that you've got them. We started to see the definitions coming from back in 2010 when Chris Griffith, who did a lot of the early work around food safety culture, put out his definition. And very similar to that, the Global Food Safety Initiative, when they published their paper in 2018, they've come up with a similar definition. I think the key thing here is that food safety culture is existing at the organizational level. It's about beliefs, it's about behaviors, and it's about assumptions. And there's an aspect that these are learned behaviors that are shared by all employees. So it might be something that a new employee won't have, but they're very quickly become part of the culture and what goes on within a business. Importantly, this impacts the food safety performance, and this is why we really need to get a handle on this and understand what the culture is within businesses. So all businesses have a food safety culture. We're quite often asked by people who are new to this, how do I go about getting food safety culture? But the answer is you've already got one. The important point is that you understand where that is and how to make it better. Because food safety culture is a continuum. You go from one end, the weak negative cultures, right through to much stronger positive cultures, and that's really where every food business wants to target. So it's about moving up the arrow towards the strong positive end. It is possible, I have made this a one-way arrow, but it is possible to drop backwards down towards the negative, but of course that's we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to build forward. But to be able to do this, you need to be able to identify where you're starting from and what your issues are before you can actually move forwards. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the tools and the research that's been going on around this to try and help businesses measure their culture. So some of the work that we've been doing at University of Central Lancashire, and this was in a lot of this is in collaboration with Guelph University, and in particular Dr. Tyrone Jesperson, is work trying to understand, first of all, the dimensions of culture, and then understanding the continuum, so this maturity of culture, if you like, and how to measure it. And so we've done work over the last 5 years on this, and came up with, on the left-hand side there, what we believe to be the 5 dimensions of food safety culture. And this we identified by looking at existing culture evaluation systems, looking at what people are measuring and what they're finding, and we're able to build those 5 dimensions. Throughout this research, we've developed measurement tools. We've developed a maturity model, which Lone now works with in her business, and we've established the importance of not just relying on one method, but in having triangulation, so that you're looking at food safety culture from different aspects. So I think it is well understood now, and there are a number of methods out there. But what I wanted to also just highlight is that the Global Food Safety Initiative, who published their paper in 2018, they also based their paper around dimensions of food safety culture, and these are actually very similar in slight changes of wording to the dimensions that we had published in our research paper. So we're really pleased that the Global Food Safety Initiative has adopted those dimensions as the basis of their work, and establishing what the critical factors are in terms of the dimensions to help businesses move their culture forward. But I started talking about measurement tools, and a lot of companies are looking to understand and measure where they are at the moment. So it is useful to know that there are quite a few measurement tools out there. This isn't an exhaustive list, so I apologize for it, those that I haven't included here, but this is just a sample, if you like, of some of the key tools that are out there. at the top, the Cultivate Food Safety Maturity Tool, plus the Pulse system, which uses the Jespersen papers and validated based on the research I spoke about a couple of minutes ago. The BRC also has a culture module, and they use the tool from TSI, or Taylor Shannon International, as does Camden Food Safety Culture Excellence, which some people might be aware of, also in partnership with TSI. There's another survey from the work of De Boek et al. At Ghent University, which is again validated based on published research, but it's not currently commercially available. And then there are a couple of commercial ones which may or may not still be out there from NSF International. There was a culture maturity model, and also Gartner had a quality culture maturity model, which is obviously looking at similar aspects. Others, so in the UK, the Food Standards Agency developed a toolkit for inspectors actually quite a number of years ago. I think this was about 2012. And that was developed from the point of view of what could inspectors look at when they went into food businesses. I think it was really a bit ahead of its time in that it was too early in the process of understanding food safety culture, really, for inspectors to use something in businesses when they're trying to do their normal inspections. But I think probably this is something that we might see governance bodies coming back to. What can our inspectors do? What can our auditors do when we're in looking at a business? What can we do to help assess and get a feel for where their culture is? And then finally, there's an Enlighten module, food safety culture as well. And the links for those that are available I've put on the slide. But I think for businesses who are looking to measure culture, the advice I would say is to challenge providers to show how their tools are validated. It's very easy for businesses to market themselves and market a tool to measure culture, but it's important to understand that their tool is actually going to measure what they think it's measuring, because it's only then it's going to help the businesses. So some of these are done based on single surveys, some of them are done based on surveys plus interviews and observation, and so on. So there are a range of different methods, and our research shows that triangulation of data provides a more accurate picture. Okay, and then I just wanted to share with you a project that we're just starting in the UK at the moment, Food Safety Culture for Business Performance. And we're doing this in collaboration with Cultivate and Dr. Lone Jespersen. And this is a novel technology-based approach to measuring food safety culture, which is ongoing weekly monitoring and weekly feedback, so that we can build in interventions to make improvements much more regularly. So this is very different from an annual survey, which you might do in some cases. This is getting online continuous feedback from the frontline operators and staff within a business, based on them just doing one question as they happen to be passing the station. So this is a very much a new approach certainly in the UK, and we're really excited to be involved with that. Okay, so some of the recent developments in food safety culture. I mentioned the Global Food Safety Initiative position paper, but we've seen a number of other developments. So, for example, the BRC, one of the first standards owners to put in a requirement around food safety culture within their standards. And we've also more recently seen the GFSI benchmarking requirements updated to include food safety culture. It's being picked up by other standards. We know IFS and FSSC 22000 in their new versions have also got requirements around food safety culture, and also the new draft of 852 2004 is including food safety culture, as is the newly released codex, which I'll show you a little bit of it in a minute. And we've also got other developments in publications to help businesses. So BSI have a publicly available specification that they've been working on, and that should be coming out soon. I mentioned the Codex HACCP, which of course was updated over the last few years, but finally adopted in September, October last year. And again, food safety culture is featuring here, both in terms of the roles of competent authorities, food business operators and consumers, and in terms of the management commitment to food safety, the culture being important to understand, acknowledge and support. So I think it's really helpful that all these bodies, the standards owners, codex, the regulators are really starting to look at food safety culture and its importance in supporting other aspects of food safety and really helping the performance in food safety of the businesses. A further international one in the USA, the new blueprint for the new era of smarter food safety, again, very much based around food safety culture alongside the other elements. So just a few things to finish off, knowledge gaps and work needed. I think we are starting to understand food safety culture better, but there are still a number of questions around the dimensions and how that's working in food businesses. So there's research still going on around that. But in particular, there's research going on around interventions and what are the best ways to improve your food safety culture. And I know the next speaker is going to be talking about some of those interventions that you can use to improve food safety culture. So I didn't want to dwell on that, but I think there are a range of different options that people are going to need, and some of those are going to be around team building, people development, training and learning, and so on, and others are going to be in other areas, so to do with the vision and strategy, what the leaders are actually doing and saying, what they're actually supporting, and so on. So a range of different interventions that we need to help move food safety culture forward. But I think it's also useful to be looking at what we can learn from outbreaks and incidents. And this is something that we're working on at the university, trying to look at the cultural clues that come from outbreaks and incidents so that we can better understand how the culture of businesses is actually causing them to have problems, and therefore learn to prevent that for the future. But I think the important thing is that we do need more research in this area, and we need to share best practices. So I think food safety supply chain networking is really important. And a few things just to highlight on that. A lot of the research that's been going on around food safety culture over the past 5 years, so we've had a food safety culture science group called SALIS, where we've had a number of members from universities around the world, and we've been meeting to try and share what's going on, make sure we're not reinventing the wheel as we're all doing our research. So we've got members, as I say, from a number of universities around the world. I'm very happy to hear from people who are working in research in food safety culture who perhaps haven't engaged with us so far, because we would really like to broaden that out and include all researchers. There's also networking with industry through the International Association for Food Protection. They have a food safety culture professional development group to try and advance food safety culture best practices for industry. And they meet annually, or usually meet annually. Last year was cancelled at the international meeting in the USA, which hopefully this year will be at the back end of July, but also operating through webinars. So if you watch out for what's happening at the IAFP, you may be able to get involved in those. And then finally, just to say, I think collaboration is really important, and networking, and to have effective networking, we do need academia, we need the governance groups from regulatory, also the private standards owners and so on, and we need industry all working together. So this is something that I've been working on, trying to build networks so that we can share and move food safety culture forward. And again, I'm very interested to hear from anyone who would like to get involved going forward as we try to link people together in this. So that's all I wanted to say for now this morning. Just put my contact email up there, and I'd be happy to hear from anyone who wants to learn more, but also very happy to take questions at the panel at the end. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carol, for these interesting insights in the development of food safety management. As we said, we have the questions afterwards, after the next presentation, but the people can already put the questions. Some people already put some questions in the chat box, so you in the meantime you can already put your questions there. By the way, we have now more than 200 people listening to this webinar from all over the world. It's a special pleasure now to introduce our next speaker. We have now heard something about research, the effect of COVID on research, and also effect of COVID on food safety management. And now we are coming to education. So it's a special pleasure to present a speaker from another part of the world, from India. Dr. Jamuna Prakash is former professor of food science and nutrition at the University of Mysore in India, and has vast teaching and research experience in the food sector. She is a fellow of ISEKI-Food and of the National Academy of Agricultural Science, India. She has an exemplary academic career with many awards and many research papers and review papers, book chapters, invited lectures, and successful completion of many research and educational projects. She has guided many students, doctoral and postdoctoral students. She is also a member of many national and international committees, life member of many professional organizations. One of them is the Global Harmonization Initiatives, where she is the ambassador for India, and also chair of the working group, I guess, for teaching and education and training. Her research is dedicated to analysis of foods, products, formulations, sensory evaluation, nutrition, digestibility and bioavailability, the nutrition status of population, food behavior, and so on. She will give us now some input of the role of education and training in the food safety culture in food handlers and consumers. So please, Jamuna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gerard, for that nice introduction. I would just like to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, but you should enter the presentation mode. Yes. Yeah, yes. Perfect.
So thank you so much for the introduction once again, and the organizers the fellow speakers, and all the delegates, participants of the webinar. Good day to all of you, because you must be from different parts of the globe, I guess. And after the two illustrious talks, I think mine is going to be very simple, wherein I would just be talking about how important is education and training in putting the values of food safety culture in the food handlers, not only in the food handlers, but also on the consumers also. Because the food environment we have today, the most of food processing operations have moved out of the households, and that calls for extra food safety measures, I suppose. The processed food industry is both from organized and unorganized sector. So this is where we see diversity in the food safety. And then we have, I think now, the catering industry, the eating away from homes, which has become very, very prominent. And these are impacted again by various other factors, the agriculture, the nutrition transition, the lifestyle, the medical care, everything. So all these become associated with these two special changes which have taken place in our food behavior. One is eating out and one is processed food. And what is happening in my talk, of course, is from the developing countries perspective, mostly from the Indian perspective. There are changes in the food selection, in what people purchase, and how they are influenced by the media, which I think is all over the world. The diversity, I put a question mark on dietary diversity because coming from the field of nutrition, we think that the food must be diverse, but this concerns our health food. But here, we do have diversity in the sense that you walk into a supermarket and you have varieties and varieties of biscuits or cookies or breakfast cereals, things like that. Now, all of them may not really be healthy. So we do have diversity in terms of number of products, but not in terms of healthful product. There is very easy access to all kinds of foods which are being sold, especially the street foods, because that's a major industry in developing countries. So with the result, what has happened, there is an increase in all kinds of highly processed foods, foods with too much of energy, sugar, salt, and there's a reduction in the healthy foods or healthy ingredients. Lately, in the last year, just maybe about 10 months or so, with the arrival of pandemic, definitely the consumer has been asking for the health food that is there. There is a small change in the market. So amidst all this, the consumer is confused. Which is the best? The home cooked food, the processed foods, or the catered foods? There is a question mark because the food choices from the consumer point of view is mostly dictated by taste. The nutrition and health and safety, they come last on the list. And according to us, the food safety professionals, we think safety has to be first priority even before nutrition, though nutrition is important. And how much a consumer asks about this safe food and nutritious food, that definitely depends upon the consumer's knowledge and awareness levels. And this is something, again, which is different in different economies. So in the food supply chain, we have the food handlers, starting from the farm where the food is produced, up to the last end where we have ready-to-eat product. Now, this is going through multiple stages and multiple handlers, either through a short journey or a long journey. And see the people who are involved, the farmers, the transporter, the retailer, the food processor, multiple food business operators, not one. And in the end, we have the consumer. And at any point of time in this supply chain, the food can get contaminated. So The knowledge of safety is important from, I think, almost everybody who's involved in the food chain. What are the various safety concerns? This slide is specifically made with the problems we face here, but I'm sure that these problems must be there even in other areas of the world. The food is grown with pesticides and chemical fertilizers. There is a lot of produce which is grown in unclean water. So that means that would carry a lot of contamination. There are non-permitted additives added because I said that some of the food also comes from unorganized sector where there is no check. The catered food can be unsafe, adulteration, unsafe packaging, use of plastics, use of antibiotics and hormones for the animal food, which again and again we find cases. And there are fraudulent practices around. Okay, all these exist. So that along with all these, this eating away from home, which I mentioned, this is a major change in the food behavior, which is happening both in urban and the rural population. We have loads and loads of data, which of course in this talk, I am not really using any data, but we do have lots of surveys done in the food behavior, wherein we see that people go out and eat. And that's where there is a challenge of food safety. There have been other changes also. One is online ordering and home deliveries of food, which became very prominent in the last 10 months because of pandemic even in our country. And surprisingly, sometimes these services were available 24/7. Though even under lockdown, the hotels were closed for eating there, but the packaged food delivery was open at all points of time. So this existed and this was being used. Though fortunately, as one of the speakers mentioned, that this is not a foodborne infection, but yet we needed to be careful about the food handler and about any surface contamination which might happen. I mean, all this we need to remember one thing. The safety and nutritional composition of food, these are the hidden qualities. This cannot be seen either by the food handler or by the consumer. So that's where we need education and training, both for the handler and the consumer, because it's a collective responsibility. And when we say culture, culture is something which is imbibed over years. It is like an evolution which happens. So the culture, the food safety culture has to be inherent within all of us so much that, for example, washing hands before eating food has to become a practice. It has to come in the culture. Or, like trying to have safe food must become a part of our daily routine. And this is where the knowledge, practice, and attitude come into picture to change the behavior. And education and training and retraining comes into picture, because this is something which has to go on and on. It is not something which ends in one slot, but training and retraining is important at every point of time. Now, coming to the issues with developing countries or maybe economies which are less developed, we have a lot of social issues when it comes to culture. And these have to be kept in mind, because here a food handler might come from a very resource poor diversity. He comes from a background of poverty, ignorance, very unclean surroundings to live in. The water resources are limited. There is no sanitation facilities. So in all these conditions, how do we expect a handler to understand something about the food safety? The literacy levels can be very low, because in our experience in training these food handlers, we have found that many of them, especially on a low level job, they are not literate at all. or maybe a few years of schooling, that is all. And it's only in a higher level, higher paid job, for example, a manager, a restaurant manager, or a cashier may be a graduate. Otherwise, they are not well educated. There has been no formal training in the food handling for most of them, I have to say. And when it comes to health literacy or nutrition literacy, I think this just is not there, or it is there in a very, very small number of food handlers. So the food handler is really not equipped to adopt the food safety culture unless some efforts are made. And why is this needed? Because this is one study, I think, from the World Bank Group in Netherlands, just 2-year-old, so it's fairly recent, which says that in India, foodborne diseases cost around $28 billion every year. So both food and waterborne infection, they are the leading causes of illness among people. And we need food safety measures so that these can be reduced. And also, see, many times these foodborne or waterborne infections, they are not reported. They are underreported in case it is just a small problem a person has, then they never go to a healthcare professional. So these incidences may not be recorded also. Water is linked to food safety, not only the food production, but to pollution-wise, to living environments, for the sanitation. So we need to have adequate and safe water, which is important for the food safety. So whether this is available in all facilities is also a big question. This is one slide which I wanted to put because most of my work is also in the area of nutrition. See, most of these gastrointestinal diseases, which are caused due to poor hygiene, they actually inhibit nutrient absorption. And now trying to find the cause of continued wasting and stunting, or rather malnutrition in children, they say that maybe this is one of the causes. That this can happen, that the child is continuously exposed to infections and finally cannot absorb nutrients. Because right now in the world, 4.2 billion people are without safe sanitation services. 3 billion do not even have hand washing facilities. And this is from one of the IFRI blog posts, which it was published just last year, I think June, very recent one. It says that improved sanitation or hygiene, it can prevent 9.1% of global disease burden and 6.3% of all deaths. This is, I think, a very, very important statistics to understand that we need safe water. Our experiences, whatever smaller, in food safety education, what does it show? You see the pictures of all these here. The bottom two ones are for the street food vending. And then the top ones are, like, one is the midday school lunch program, which we have for school children in India, one of the largest feeding program. And then we have these foods which we have displayed. We use this to give nutrition education program to housewives, to school children, to all that. So lots of products which are being developed. Okay, so there have been many awareness creation programs we have done at different levels, starting from school children, parents of school children, the popular lectures, health workers, and then also the food service providers. Just one or two I will just show you. In one community, we just taught children about the water hygiene. So we had school children from 5 villages. We just taught them in school about the role of water in health, about washing hands, drinking clean water. And what happened, of course, increase in knowledge and awareness regarding hygiene. But then there was a significant reduction in overall morbidity, especially in helmintic infections in children, because we also collected the samples, we did the lab study, and we followed the morbidity pattern for 3 years. This was a 3-year project. So we we saw that just teaching them about hand washing and drinking clean water made a lot of difference in bringing down infection. In food service providers, for the midday school lunch program, we had 20 schools and almost more than, we had around 5,000 children total, I think. And we trained the cooks who were helping these to make the food, make the lunch, cook the lunch in these schools. And we had a series of training program. And we saw after that, again, this was more than 1 year, we saw a lot of changes, a lot of improvement, whether it was storage facilities, the hygiene, the serving of food, having kitchen garden, water supply facilities, or handling food waste. So it just some training programs can make a lot of difference. This was a very big study. I have just taken one part of it, 8 restaurants in Bangalore, done for almost 3 to 4 years, wherein we did train a huge number of food handlers. And that's where we got all the data about the education of these and background they come from and things like that. We saw that we did actually 3 training sections, individual training sections, and then followed them up. Definitely, there was a lot of improvement in all aspects of food handling with repeated training. And 3 trainings really helped us to improve the overall level of hygiene, sanitation, and the food safety in all these eating facilities. Okay, now what were the constraints for training? One which I think is very significant is that reluctance from management to take part in the study. The management was not cooperating because they had to give the handler away for us for certain time to train. There is a high rate of attrition and turnover because these people are, I think, coming from outside and staying in a city or whatever. So there was a changeover. We would train them and they would leave job and go somewhere else. And again, we would find another set of handler whom we would train, things like that. The time needed for training was very difficult to get. And creation of proper facilities for following food safety, because we also need some basic infrastructural facilities in a eating place for them to follow. For example, a proper sink, a proper storage facility, a proper cleaning area, whatever it may be. And these were a problem. But the plus points were there was good cooperation from all the food handlers. They had a positive attitude. They wanted to learn. And there was a better compliance from workers with lesser level of education. They wanted to learn and they wanted to have more training. So that means they were really open to these trainings which we were given. Yeah, this is just a slide to let you know that we have a food regulation authority in India, which is Food Safety and Standards Authority. And they do give a lot of courses to the food handlers. Like there are a total of 17 courses and all these material, this is done in different places by the trainers. And all the training material is available on their website if somebody wants to download whatever they train. So we have basic level certification for the food business operators just for 4 hours. This is like street food vending, catering, manufacturing, etc. We have advanced courses in certification. This is for catering, again for manufacturing, storage, transport, and retail. Then we have special courses for the food business. It's for special industries. Like people working in milk and meat industry, they have one set. People working with meat and poultry, they have one set of course. So these courses are available in our country to train people in this, and this is going on. They've already trained a lot, but ours being a very huge population, I think we still need a lot more training to go. To summarize, there's been a dramatic rise, of course, in processed food consumption as well as in the catered food. So, you know, there are 2 major problems or concerns. One is safety and also is nutrition, because generally all my talks, they do have nutrition component in that because I come from that background. And in all my food safety program, I always add on something about nutrition also. So food safety can be ensured with adequate education and training of food handlers across all levels, whatever it may be. And this is something which is continuous. We can't say that this just finishes in one day. We have to just keep on doing it again and again. And there are new players in the field, there are new entrants in the market, and everybody must be trained to ensure quality and compliance for the food regulations. So thank you so much. That was my small talk on the role of education. So if there are any questions at the end, I can answer. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to give some simple thoughts to all of you.
Thank you very much, Jamuna, for these interesting insights in food safety training, which is especially important also now in this COVID situation. Paola, do you
Yes. I would like to invite on the screen all speakers of this morning, Lucia and Carol as well. There is a number of questions in the chat, and the ISEKI-Food Association staff, Fotini in this case, I thank you very much, will help us. I would like just to open the discussion. We have a very long list of questions, so maybe then I will ask also the speakers to reply quickly. I mean, with the short answers, in order to see if we can manage to answer to all. I have a quiz, just a brief question that maybe can open this time, this question and answer time. Food safety culture and science actually put together a different environment, different disciplines, different target groups, different knowledge, different languages, and so on. What could be the role of citizen science and citizens science projects, where you put together citizens, I mean normal people, consumers, and scientists working together in order to improve the food safety culture? I don't know if this can be a strategy, because this is a part also of the responsible research and innovation key elements. So I don't know if this is a question that you may be able to contribute in.
So shall I have a go at that? Yeah, so I'm aware actually where citizen science has been used in North America in a similar way, getting consumers to take pictures when they're in in restaurants or where they're buying food and so on, and taking pictures of what they consider to be good in terms of food safety, and also where they think there are issues, and sharing those pictures. So that's an initiative that I know North Carolina State University had a project going on that. I'm not sure whether it's still open, but it was certainly collecting a lot of information about good practices and poorer practices out there in hospitality and food retail, which could then be used, I guess, as examples to help improve practices and culture within those venues. So I think that sort of thing could work. I think certainly getting more engagement of consumers and consumers understanding industry better is something that could help, and certainly making sure that consumers have got the right
message,
knowledge, the messages themselves, so that they to help develop their attitudes and practices, and some of the things that Jamuna was talking about the basics are still really important, not just in developing countries around the world, just getting the basic information across there. And the COVID pandemic has certainly helped with some of that too, in the instructions that people have been following.
May I?
Yeah.
I think somewhere the consumer also has to be responsible. It's not only a food manufacturer, but the consumer has to be responsible for the food safety also. Because let us say the manufacturer has taken all the precaution of preparing and packaging the food in a proper way. But after the consumer takes it home, the consumer has to use it properly as specified. You open a food package which you need to put in the refrigerator and leave it outside for 5 days. Obviously, the food will get spoiled and you will not know. So I think that's why I said that it is not a handler alone, but starting from the handler up to the consumer, and even consumer education becomes very significant here to follow the food safety till the end. So that is something that has to be a part and parcel of food safety. We need to have a consumer knowledge forum also, very important. Consumer education also, very, very important to see that the food safety culture persists, you know. That's all.
Thank you very much. Lucia, would you like to complete?
I strongly agree. Within our project, we have interviewed also some more than 1,500 consumers, and according to this survey, to the responses, most of them declared we had no really information how to properly manage the food, the delivered food once they had used but not consumed it completely. So this is so yeah, I agree. It's really important also to educate consumer, and maybe it would be useful, as it was said, to start with the youngest, because they are our future. So not only the consumer right now are consuming food, but starting from the youngest one.
Thank you very much. Vanini.
Yes, hello from my side. So we have many questions in the chat box. We will try to answer all of them. I would like to ask with a question to Lucia Vanini. It's about the consumer food, that the purchases from the consumer food increased by 5%, and among them the increase of pasta purchases is 17%. So what is the reason why the people buy so much pasta? Is it because the long shelf life, or because there is another reason?
There are several reasons, for sure, because of the long shelf life, and that's specific data were related to the Italy. So maybe this has a strongly affected the final result. But for sure, one of the main reason is the long shelf life. Also, other food with the long shelf life had a strong increase in buying. I mean, where the sales of that product.
We have problems.
Long shelf life.
Lucia.
Yes, I think I problem in hearing.
We have some problems with Lucia. Okay, now it's better, but
can you hear me?
Yes, now yes. So I think that you answer somehow, so maybe we can move to the next question.
Yes, actually also the second question was to Lucia, because she mentioned in her presentation vividly application processes that could help to have a safer food. But what about the poorer countries? How can they handle these, assuming the food is invaded by the pandemics?
Yes, obviously, all these technologies can be easily used in the developed country. The situation for sure is different for the countries with the lower development. As Chamuna said, I think the approach should be a slightly different according to the condition. And I think that in this education, I mean, the education of consumer plays a really strong effect. Different solutions should be found. For example, use of natural antimicrobials that we have tested for the packaging, but also for the food could be can be much more affordable rather than innovative technologies that, especially at the beginning, are rather expensive. Or, for example, protective cultures. There are several studies on protective cultures which have antimicrobial effect towards several pathogens and also towards some viruses. So this could be should be investigated also against coronavirus or other microbial hazards.
Thank you. So next question.
Probably Chamuna, sorry, can add some more information or her point of view on.
Okay. See, like even in developing countries, the food delivery problem and all this, it will be the same and others. All right, it's not going to change. And actually, in all developing economies also, see, now the culture is changing because of the social media platform. We didn't have that earlier, but now there is a sea change as to how a consumer orders food, how you get it, and it's totally changed. See, literally every villager in India owns a mobile, sometimes not one, two also, which we can never think of, right? So they are used to the social media platform. They know how to order. They have downloaded apps. They know how to order food. So food delivery, all this is same as in advanced country. The only thing is that here, my problem is that the food delivery boy may not know anything about the food safety. So he comes from a background, he's not trained for food handling, which is important. Okay, so that is something which has to be done. So in our condition, or in a condition of, let us say, lower countries with lower economies, they would need to train everybody in that mode so that they are prepared for these new developments, new mode of transport of food, I need to say. Over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next question is for Carol. In reference to the current relevance of certification in good social practices, how can it be harmonized with a food safety management system?
Sorry, how can certification be harmonized with food safety management system, or how can food safety culture?
I think how food safety, in reference to the current relevance of certification in good social practices, how can it be harmonized with the food safety management system? So the certification.
Okay. Well, I mean, certification is widely used and has been for a number of years around the world, and it tends to be used for making sure that businesses are meeting safe to supply conditions, and which would obviously be the requirements within the various standards. So I think it can be quite effective as an ongoing thing to help move food safety management forward. But I think we have to remember is that certification is done on the basis of usually on the basis of audits, which might be annual audits. They might be less frequent than that. So I think we have to remember that auditing is just a snapshot of what's going on at the time. And what we really need to know is that the businesses are operating to a high standard on an ongoing basis. And I think that's why it's important that businesses have a strong culture, because what you're talking about then is that the same things are being done, that the good practices are being followed all the time. So not just when someone is there overlooking, looking over their shoulders to see what's going on the day of an audit. So I hope that kind of answers what the question's getting at, in that certification's got a role to play, certainly, and in terms of the culture piece, the fact that certification bodies and standards owners are starting to require businesses to be thinking about their culture and thinking about how they develop it and move it to the more mature, the strong level. I think that's a good thing, that the certification bodies are pushing for businesses to improve their culture, because that's obviously going to help with that ongoing, making sure that the food safety is part of the business 24/7, and not just when an auditor is going to come and look at the systems and see what's happening on site.
Thank you. The next question is about the cold plasma technology. So first of all, if it is safe, and secondly, if which method is more effective when using cold plasma technology.
Yes, it's safe, since they are produced during the plasma treatment, are produced some reactive species which quickly react with the organic material, that is the food or organic matter on the surfaces. So it does not produce harmful compounds for the operators. I'm not pretty sure about if I understood the second part of the question, which referred to.
Maybe the person asking means if there are other methods more effective.
But more effective. There are each technology could be effective. It depends on the system, on the technology to produce it, the specific characteristic of the food system or matrix you're using, the processing condition. You have to find a balance. I don't think, but Paola is a food technologist, knows better than me. I don't think there is the technology that is perfect, the top one, and can be used for everything. I don't think it exists anymore. So, not yet, at least.
No, not yet. Thank you, Lucia.
Another question to Carol. Several of the tools are tools to be carried out by external organizations to the food industry. What can be done from inside the food industries to measure their food culture?
Okay, well, yeah, a lot of the tools I mentioned are external, but some of them are published. So it's possible for food businesses to get hold of the articles where things are published, and perhaps use the basis of what's written there to establish their own routines. And certainly there are a number of authors who've looked at food safety culture in different parts of the world as well. We were talking about developing countries. Shingai Nyarigwe is an author who has looked at this in a number of countries, and her work is published. So there's a number of things people could pick up from there. Also, the Global Food Safety Initiative document is accessible. That's freely available on the web, and that's got a number of what the GFSI considers to be critical things under each of their dimensions. So food businesses can get hold of these documents and look at what's important in each area, and that'll help them to perhaps develop their own checklist to try and understand where they're at, but also to get a feel for where they might need to do more work. So I think there is quite a lot of information out there that businesses can get hold of. There's also maturity models that are published that businesses can take a look at. Cultivate has one on their website, and you can look at what the criteria are at different levels of maturity, and perhaps talk with your management and with your staff about where people think that your business is against those different criteria that are already published. So hopefully that's helpful. I do think that businesses, by getting some education and understanding of food safety culture and what makes up food safety culture, can start to understand their own without necessarily going for external verification. But if you are in a position to afford to do that, then you can learn a lot about your business by working with some of the groups that are out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question is for Jamuna. So are there any new procedures for sanitation management in both process facilities and personnel?
I think the procedures are very well laid out. It depends upon the kind of industry you're talking about, right? So for each industry, the procedures are laid out. What about the washing facilities? What is the needed by way of infrastructure? How they should go about it? The personal hygiene. The procedures are laid out. They are available in so many documents. There is nothing specific as such. But then in our training programs, because we have done it, like for example, let us say for cooks in a rural school. So there we would like show them the hand washing. We would show them that how a kitchen has to be kept clean. So these will be smaller ones. These programs we developed depending upon where we were going and what we were doing. And this was all to follow a set of rules so that the basic hygiene and sanitation is followed. But for the industries, there are very well laid procedures depending upon each industry separately. Over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there is also another question to you. Which are the main staff barriers that food enterprises face nowadays in adopting food safety culture?
I have to say sometimes that it is, in my experience working with all these food handlers, first it is the lack of knowledge and awareness. It is the first thing, because in all our training programs, once we teach them, once we show them with models and with we demonstrate to them, they are really able to pick up very fast. So it's just been that they have not been exposed, that is all. So it is the exposure to knowledge, exposure to awareness, which really makes them understand and learn quite a bit. So the very first one is that. Then next comes the infrastructural facility. After giving all the information, giving them everything, we found that they needed some minimum facility to follow our training, and that minimum facility that is to be provided by the management. And there is a question mark whether management is cooperative or not. In our instances, they may not be. They were good. In our studies, we did find that at least most of them, they try to follow and give whatever we asked them for. But in all cases, it was not possible. Because suppose if you take a big city like Bangalore, where we did our study, these are the small restaurant in malls, and they have a designated small space given to them. And the kitchen is very small, the storage area is very small. So if I ask them for a separate washing facility, they cannot provide to the worker. It's like that. So the infrastructural facility becomes the next one, which is an issue. Other than that, I think everything else can be managed. You can manage clean water, you can manage anything else which is needed, because it's all how you are handling the food. That is manageable. But these two are the major issues. One is the education and awareness of the food handler. Another one is the facilities or the resources with which they work. Okay.
I have can I do a small question, because this is brings me to a question for all, maybe. Education. I mean, in this case, Jamuna highlighted that the need of I mean, the food handlers or the food, I mean, who is dealing with the food needs is scared somehow, or they don't have enough knowledge. But overall, is more a question of upgrading the food professional, the food I mean the workforce, or upskill. I mean, it's a question, because in my opinion are two different levels that we needed to take into account. I don't know, also Carol, from based on your experience, if it's what is the solution? Maybe both. I mean, it's just to launch.
Yeah, see, it's also the social structure, because this is not just food handling we talk about, but the social structure. See, for example, here, for the rural school, the government made it mandatory that the cooks and helpers will be hired from the same village, wherever the school is. So it is a social structure wherein there are so many other things which are involved. It is not only how a person can handle a food. So these people who were employed were really ladies, women from the village, who had no education whatsoever. Of course, they were good cooks. They were cooks because they cook meals for the family. So they started cooking meals for the school children also in a school. But there is no question of any training. There is no question of any formal education. But we have other social issues which need to accommodate. Now, these are accommodated in the school. So the best thing was that we got these ladies and we trained them in food handling. And it really worked wonders in that given situation. So the formal training, the formal education, the upgrading or the upscaling, when we talk about these, we need to think which background they are coming from, what are the other social implications of doing this, which is a present situation. In future, maybe it may not be, because now everybody is going to school. But in the present situation, you are employing a lady from a village who's totally uneducated. So what do we do? That is a question. Okay. Yeah, Karen, sorry, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think there is a need for both. I think the sort of the education level and the standards, if you like, for people operating in different roles within industry are quite important, and we don't really have a formal structure for looking at that. But one of the things we've found, and we've been doing some research around HACCP again, just to see where people are with that. And what we're finding is that although there's a requirement to review HACCP, make sure it's up to date, make sure it's still valid on an ongoing basis within its manufacturing sites we've been working with, there's really the technical managers and the HACCP teams are really struggling with this, and they don't have this, they necessarily have the knowledge and the risk management mindset that's needed to understand what the issues are. So there's perhaps a background education issue there, and we perhaps need some sort of way of knowing what skills are needed for these roles within food businesses to be able to do that. Because what we're being told is that people within HACCP teams, they don't have the confidence. They might have joined the business and they've inherited the HACCP system. So there's kind of an assumption that the people who did it before must have done it right. So we're not going to challenge it. And of course, the whole ethos of HACCP is that you're challenging and making sure that you are managing all the relevant hazards. So I think this is something that we're starting to understand is not being done very well. And the education and the competencies of the people in these key roles is really important. I also think in the skills side, I support Jamuna, what she's saying about the importance of training and people right on the front line, just having that understanding of what their role is and what's important in their role. And that can be important depending on their background and not having previous education clearly, or previous training and understanding. Clearly they need to understand why they're being asked to do things, and you know, why that's important for the food and protecting their consumers. So I think both areas are important.
Thank you.
Well, there are many questions in the chat.
Maybe let's select a couple and then we go to the end.
Yes, there are many to Lucia about the packaging. There is also one comment that maybe we should use the term, I think it was food quality culture and not food safety culture, because also the quality is involved. I will just select the first one I see here. It's to Lucia, and how soon would the product be available to the food industry, if it will be available? I think it refers to the food packaging. And the second part of the question is if you know any other strategies in the development to eliminate the COVID from the food packaging.
Sorry, just to understand, what does it refer to, the food packaging? I mean, the innovative prototype for the food delivery, or yes, that? Okay, yes. That one is already ready. We have a prototype and we are launching on the market. We have some companies that are interested, so we are discussing whether they want to have the patent, to use the technology. So it's almost ready. As for the sanitation of the packaging, well, traditional is based on use of sanitizers. So these are the reference sanitizers such as alcohol, chlorine, hypochlorite. There are several for it depends also on the type of packaging, because we know that there are different plastic with different chemical, physical and function characteristic, and so it should be checked the compatibility of the sanitizer or the technology with the chemical, physical and compositive features of the polymer or material used for the packaging. So again, we cannot provide only one as the absolute one that works for all the packaging, because it should be chosen according to the packaging material you're using, whatever it is, plastic or glass, or even among plastics there are different types with different characteristics and functionalities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In short, well, I don't want to be too long, and just to save time and leave time for the others. In case, I mean, attendants can contact me and all the others. I think yes, to have more details.
Yes, yes. Actually, maybe we can also, I mean, for who has not the email addresses of our speakers. We can send them based on the request. We will get also, I would like to tell all the participants that they will receive an evaluation form in which they can also add comments, and if needed, obviously, we will send and provide the questions directly to the speakers in order to have a direct contact after this webinar between the speakers, the experts here, and you attendees on the other side of our screen. I think that we can, we have, I mean, 2 hours time is gone very, very quickly. Gerard, would you like to add something else before the closure?
I just would like to close the questions with one question coming back to the topic of this webinar. It's about new skills and new competencies. We have heard that there are several innovations triggered by COVID in research, in packaging, nutrition, also education. My question to the speakers is, do you see any new skills or new competencies which should be included in higher education, which are necessary for the future, also after COVID and for COVID? Do we need to implement something which is necessary for the innovations in research or education, in higher education, which is not at the moment included?
That's quite a difficult question, because obviously higher education, different courses will cover different things. But I think maybe to have a bit more focus on the issues for the consumers and about how consumers need to be provided with good information, both from the nutrition and the food safety point of view. And so if we've got people going through higher education, they might be going into food companies where it's important, obviously, that if they're making products, that they're giving good, easy to follow instructions for how to handle their foods. You know, we might have people going through higher education into other roles in government and so on. So I think what we've been learning from COVID and what we talked about this morning, quite a lot, that's around the consumer and consumer protection. But also, I think there's things that we've been learning in manufacturing around keeping plants going. How do you do social distancing in a production line? What can you do? How can you protect your staff? So I think there's a whole lot of new things there as well that should be included in education going forward for graduates who are going to enter the food industry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Lucia, Jamuna.
Yes, I think what she said is a really good point. That is, we need to also protect the workers who are working in the food industry. So that's a major concern. So I think I'll put it in one word. We need to be prepared for pandemics. So I think the preparedness will come in so many ways. It is not just the food, but maybe in all sectors. So I think it has been, according to me personally, I feel it's been a very great lesson for us to learn that what has pandemic brought in, the changes it has brought to the world. Mm-hmm. And then also from our side, I think we need to put the farmer on the top, because with all these constraints, I think agriculture, it went on. The farmers always worked, and we did not see so much of food shortages as we thought we would see. So definitely we need to be prepared for anything of this sort, which was unheard of. We were not prepared. So that I think that is one lesson we have learned from the pandemic. That's what I feel.
Thank you.
Just from my side, I agree. I would add some more words, keywords. I think it's important to have an holistic approach and be able to interact with all the actors through the whole food chain. I mean, from primary production to the consumers. So maybe not to have the knowledge of different sectors, but be able to interact and speak with all the stakeholders. I think this for the future is important. So multidisciplinarity.
Thank you very much. This is a good point. Thank you, Lucia, for this perspective. Yes, I don't know, Garad. Maybe it's the time to close now. But as we mentioned before, all attendees are welcome also to send us additional questions. We will address them to our speakers, and also you can add comments in the evaluation form you will receive. So I think that now is time to close. So firstly, I would like to thank really very much all the speakers of this morning. They were very diverse contribution, different perspectives, but actually they allow us to give us some really interesting contributions to the discussion and the whole webinar series on beyond COVID-19 skills and competencies. And Lucia, Jamuna, and Carol, thank you very much. I really hope we'll keep in touch in the future, and ASKFOOD will for sure continue via the permanent alliance we are setting within this project. And as I mentioned before, for who is interested, follow us via the social media. We are launching now the registration for the webinar of next week, which brings us and we'll have different contributions from the knowledge, the KICS, food, climate, and health. So from my side, thank you very much, and see you next week. Gerard?
Bye-bye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.